Thank you for the introduction there. I hope you've all had a great conference as well, and thank you for being here. It is rather the last slot, so I will do my best to make it as engaging as possible for you this afternoon as well. So I'm going to talk to you about digital leadership this afternoon. Currently I'm the User Experience Director at Stark. Until last week I was in the same role at Saint-Gobain, but we literally got taken over last week. So it's a bit of a change for us as well. So I'm going to talk a bit about leadership. Really, this this talk was really based around over in the COVID period. I found I was increasingly being contacted by a number of sort of ex-colleagues, ranging from product managers, product owners, project developers, etc., about some advice about how to lead teams successfully as well. So what I want to do in the time we've got this afternoon is share some of my experiences, some tips that you can take back to the workplace to put those into practice, hopefully, to help you build successful teams. So just before I begin, how many of you are in a leadership role? If you raise your hand. Great, good, good. So lots of you in the room. So, well, hopefully there'll be something here for all of you, whether you are in leadership, you're new to it, you're experienced, or it's an area you aspire to get into as well. So you may well say, well, what qualifies me to talk about digital leadership? Well, I've been working in digital design for over 25 years now, for some top world-class and global brands, running multifunctional teams across a wide range of industries. That ranges from e-commerce, telecommunications, gaming, media, financial services, and currently the sexy world of building distribution as well. So where I now, as I say, Stark is the company I now work for. They are probably a name you haven't heard of. They're Danish owned. They run a number of building merchants across different countries, particularly the Nordics, also Germany, and now the UK. Probably Jewson is the one that you've heard of if you're into your building manufacturing and distribution as well. So I also am a keen advocate for women, building women in tech as well. I've been a founding member of the Saint-Gobain Women's Network, as well as I run an annual TEDx Women's event that's based in London as well. So I feel really that very much the experiences that I've had, being exposed to working with such a diverse group of people really over the years, has really shaped my career and my leadership style, and that continues to do so to this day. So here's a definition of leadership. So I'm sure that you're all passionate about what you do because you're here and you care about what you do. But just producing good work is not enough. What we've got to do today is to be able to combine good people skills with good technical skills as well to set teams up for success as well. So here's a number of digital sort of leadership behaviours here, and they're just leadership behaviours actually, not just to digital. But what I'd say, I'm sure there's a few you could add on to this as well very easily. But I think what's important today is I'm just going to focus on a few of these because there's not going to be time to talk about this whole plethora of different words here as well. The ones I'm going to focus on are these, and I'm going to start with storytelling. So, well, storytelling is a really effective way to make your presentations memorable if you are prepared to tell a story as well. Now, here's a quote from Neil Stevenson from IDEO. They're a respected user experience agency based in the US. And what Neil's really saying here is that if you tell a story, or someone tells you a story, it will help you connect with the product, with the people that you're designing the products and services for very much. So why is storytelling so effective? Well, what it is our brains work differently when we hear a story. The neural activity can increase up to 5 times, and that means when that happens, it releases dopamine, which in turn makes that story more memorable. In turn, you then get oxytocins released, and in turn, what that does, it creates a level of empathy that makes you resonate much more with the storyteller, hence the whole experience becoming much more of a more memorable one. Incredibly powerful. So I'm very fortunate in what I do. Predominantly I've run design teams and do so to this day. And we have the ability to be able to visualise stories as well. And I'm sure many of you have used personas, have developed personas in your own businesses as well. And these are the ones that we've developed at Syon for our customers very much. And I'm pleased to say by bringing these personas to life, we socialise them with posters around the business. We talk about them in product development plans and sprint planning, etc. We've really brought them to life so that they become part of our customer base, the customers we're designing for, rather than designing for ourselves. We've also developed branch personas because the day-to-day lives of our branch colleagues are very different to the days that we have. I'm sure much like me, you spend a lot of your day behind a computer screen, either in the office or at home, whereas these guys, they're out in trucks making deliveries, they're in branches dealing with customers, and they're in yards managing, moving all the materials around as well. So this is really an example of bringing those personas to life. I'm going to tell you about Sam the admin here, as we call her. Well, Sam's a really important part in our customer personas because she's very supportive to the builder. She's in a supportive role. She's quite often a wife or a partner. Equally, she could be a son or daughter supporting the family as well. Likely to do this part-time, could be doing another job as well. But what Sam actually does is she sends quotes out to customers, she manages invoices, but really importantly, she does a lot of ordering of these building materials. So she's really valuable to us from a cost perspective as well. Now, Sam will never go into a branch. What she'll do is all our connections with her will either be over the phone or much more increasingly online these days. So we brought Sam to life when we really worked on a big account redesign of our account area to recognise the things that Sam needed. And what Sam needed was things like easy access to invoices, the ability to be able to repeat orders very quickly, and able to pay her bills on time 24/7 at any time she wanted to as well. We actually brought these personas to life by going a stage further, and we got the people in this workshop that we were running to actually come as that persona. So that really brought them to life by sort of reenacting them and really putting themselves in their shoes, as such to say. Talking of shoes, so I think we all do this, and I just use that term there. We all putting ourselves in our customers' shoes, so we really understand how it feels. But how about we put ourselves in our stakeholders' shoes and we really begin to understand how our stakeholders feel as well? Because that's what I think we lack doing. And what we need to do that is, I think in our day-to-day work, we feel that people sort of annoy us. And again, I'm just to wake you all up a bit in the room, has anyone annoyed you at work over the past few weeks? Just stick your hand up. Yeah, everyone. Everyone's been annoyed. And do you think that person who's annoying you gets up that morning and goes, I'm going to go in today and I'm really going to annoy Julie today because I'm going to get a lot of pleasure out of that? So, no, of course they don't. Well, maybe. Hopefully they don't. But generally, people have the best of intentions when they're interacting with you. But what I think I want to try and do is to get you to reframe, change your mindset so you can change that behaviour of that stakeholder who's engaging with you. They may be coming over as demanding, aggressive, even rude. But what you can do is stop them in their steps by saying, are you annoyed? How can I help you? And hopefully by sort of doing that you'll get them to rethink. And they're actually maybe explain to you that they're working to an urgent deadline, they've got a presentation to deliver, or actually there could be something more serious going on in their personal life or with their personal health that they may download to you as well. So it's really thinking about how you can develop a better empathy for your stakeholders as well. Because, unsurprisingly, a recent Harvard Business Review study found that rudeness relates to a lot of a decrease in productivity at work and just general morale, really. You can see from these figures here that people's efforts really do decline quite quickly in the workplace. Okay, so I'm going to give you a bit of example here. Meet Charlotte and George. George is a designer in my team. Nice guy, young, bit shy. And what we found at work, Charlotte is a project owner. She's experienced, she's more senior. She's also really good at her job and dealing with stakeholders as well. But what she was doing, she wasn't letting George present his designs, which was really undermining George. It was knocking his confidence, and it wasn't really letting him grow at all. So George talked to me about this, and we decided that what George would do on his own, he would make that bold decision of speaking to Charlotte and saying he wanted to present his designs. He reassured her that he could do this and that he would practice presenting with her to get her confidence around this. So all in all, this was a win-win situation because it meant Charlotte could concentrate on what she needed to do. It gave her more time to work on her own work, and it also incredibly increased George's confidence and his personal development as well. So good all round. So what I want you to do is think about how you build strong working relationships. So adjust your communication style. So tailor it to your audience, the right audience, so that you can connect with them in the right way and talk their language. How I will talk to a CEO compared to how I'll talk to a colleague in the branch would be quite a different style. How stop negative behaviour, turn negatives into positives. Own difficult situations, a bit like our friend George did there. He took control of the situation. And emphasise with the best of intentions so that you really understand how others feel. And as I said, don't feel that they've come intentionally to annoy you that day. Right, moving on. Conflict and collaboration. Now, I think we're taught really, aren't we, that conflict is bad. And in the wrong hands, conflict is bad. But, and I think this really comes through at home and at school, we're taught to avoid it. Let's avoid that conflict. But actually, when we collaborate, when we see conflict, and that means you've got contrasting opinions between a couple of people or more people, and that conflict can last, it could harbour for, you know, a few hours, a few days or longer even. But actually, we can turn that conflict into positives. And I'm going to introduce you to this model. You may have heard of it before. It's called the Thomas Kilmann model. It was developed in the 1970s by Kenneth Thomas and Ralph Kilmann. And what they're doing here is really identifying a conflict model where the two sort of main aspects of this are assertiveness, and this is where you are really focused on your opinion, basically. Whatever, I'm going to get my opinion over, I'm going to get my way, I'm going to get it done that way. And you're dismissive of the other person. And cooperative, where you go completely the other way and you stop believing in what you value and what you want, so you just cooperate with the other person's opinion. But actually, that's not really good. And in between there, you could get situations where you avoid it completely, or you become too accommodating, you compromise too much, or going far up the assertiveness scale, you find you're trying to compete with that person, which can turn into an argument. But by collaborating, what happens is you can really come up with good creative thinking. We've used that term today as being really valuable in our organisations to get a whole range of different possibilities. And, you know, by doing this collaboration, you can achieve good wins. Example here of a team working really collaboratively together, really. And you can introduce collaboration into your teams and parts of your organisation by running creative thinking workshops, sketching sessions, etc. Hackathons are other great ways to do this as well. This is an idea we use at work. As I say, my background is as a creative, but sometimes when we say to people in a room, right, you're going to do some sketching now, they sort of like it's, you know, rabbits in headlights. They just want to get out and, oh no, I can't draw. But everyone can draw. So how we break that ice is by using this 30 circles technique where people sketch ideas and they just have to basically turn these shapes into objects in any way they want to, really. And it's a great icebreaker at a session as well. So, with collaboration, some things to take back to the workplace to assess your team's behaviours. Get each team member to write down 3 negative behaviours. You know, do this in obviously a safe environment with your team as well. But it could things be like, you know, lack of listening, they're always late to meetings. Get those to identify some areas. And then within the team, share and discuss about why that happens and how they're going to resolve that as well. And then just review regularly, you know, come back a month later and review those and see and make sure that you have made progress in these areas as well. And vision. What I always have is a vision. I believe that we all have the power to, particularly in the elements of marketing and branding that we work in, we've got the power to be the dreamers, the believers, and bring these visions to life. Of course, working with designers to visualise these concepts as well is a fantastic way to do this as well. And this is an example of a storyboard we've worked on at Saint-Gobain. Now, traditionally, the building trade is quite far behind. It's not the most digital of industries. But by doing this, we will be able to show a vision of what that story could be. You know, robots working in our warehouses, facial recognition, driverless vehicles, etc. You know, some of this may never happen, but it produces a vision that gets people excited about where the company's going and the possibilities as well. I mean, I use the term, it's a bit like, you know, we might start on the catwalk, but we might probably end up in Primark. But at least we've gone on a journey and shown what the vision can be, very much. So, resilience. It's something that we all need. To be a digital leader, you need great resilience. Now, this is something that can really be not necessarily taught immediately. I think it comes through experience, and I've certainly learnt that myself. And we know as digital leaders that bad stuff happens. It just happens. But what we've got to do is take control of it. We've got to remain strong. We've got to not show our emotions. We've got to focus on the present, and we've got to get the task done. And it can also be lonely in a leadership role as well. But what you've got to do as a leader is, before you can look after others, make sure you look after yourself very much as well. So that means, you know, preparing for your day, taking the time to do that rather than just rushing into it at the start of a morning. It means planning in breaks in your day as well. So make time in to go out at lunchtime. Take the dog for a walk if you've got one, or maybe you could get one of those robotic things as well as time progresses to do it for you. But make sure you go out. I mean, fresh air and sunlight is a great way to invigorate you, and it stops fatigue as well. Also, I think it's time to take time to have your own interests. Don't just live and breathe work. It's things like maybe you do a sport, or maybe you do gardening. I myself, one of my things I do is I do a ceramics class, which is a great relief. And I literally do not look at my phone screen for 2 hours when I'm in that class, because I've got clay all over my hands, so I can't as a starter. But it's a really good way for me to switch off. Just going to wrap up there, and I actually think I'm ahead of time. I thought I wouldn't be, so you all get to grab a drink a bit earlier, hopefully, before you go as well. Just to talk a bit about hybrid working, really. I know we're in a forever changing environment. Obviously, COVID changed all our lives in so many ways. And what it particularly did do, it removed a lot of the sort of annual rituals, our daily rituals that we have in our lives. And for many of us, that was things like our daily commute to work. You know, that was actually quite an important time for lots of people, where they might be preparing for their day, or they might just literally have it as downtime, you know, to read a book, to forget about work. The same when they're commuting home as well. And one of my colleagues was particularly struggling with this. So what he'd done as a technique was he built in that the time that he would normally travel to work, which in his case was about 30 minutes, he took that time to go for a walk. So it was a cut-off from work, starting work. You know, it was his bit before he then turned his computer on and started work. Of course, it's all evolving as we now coming back into the office. Myself, we're in an office a couple of days a week now. So I think we've got to be adaptive in our ways that we do this as well. So some tips here really for hybrid working are set clear expectations. So again, I think whether you've got a remote team or you're in the office, it's about having a clear time about how you do things, you know, basic protocol, you know, prepare beforehand, make sure phones are switched off, you know, you've got a decent screen background in case anyone walks through the room. I could tell you about an also incident when my 25-year-old son walked past a group of women on the women's network call I was in, but that's another story. But so I think it's those basic things, making sure those things are in place, etiquette that you have, as you would have very much when you're in the office as well. Set regular meeting times. So, you know, rituals, put those in place, you know, daily stand-ups if you have those, regular review meetings, one-to-ones with your team are as important, having those, be it physically or physically or remotely, very much as well. Have an open door policy. Whether you're again in the office or not, I always have this open door policy of telling people that I try to get back to them within 2 hours. You know, even if I'm in a meeting, then hopefully I can get back to them within 2 hours. Obviously there's times you're in an all-day workshop or you're out at a conference such as today, but obviously setting your out of office for those times and having a contact that you can provide for that person as well. Build a culture of trust very much is key these days as well. We've talked a bit about sort of vulnerability this afternoon and how to handle that. We know some people really struggled with their mental health through the COVID period as well and being a bit more isolated as well. So I think it's sort of keeping eyes out for others in your team. And I think building that culture so that your team trusts you, so they feel that if a colleague is feeling a bit down, although I may not have noticed that maybe, what they're prepared to do is come to me and openly say, hey, so-and-so's feeling a bit down, Julie, today. Maybe you should just have a word with them and ask them how they feel. That's really important. Be open to new approaches. Again, you know, different ways to do meetings. You know, I think there's a lot of new tech coming out all the time. We all made that move, I think, to Teams, where we would have been reluctant to do that before COVID, or Zoom, whatever, Google meetings, etc. But I think as technology evolves as well, we'll find that we're using, you know, virtual reality more probably in meetings as time progresses to set up a sort of more of a meeting room environment, avatars popping up, etc. You know, I think the possibilities can be really exciting in that approach, you know, and be open to them as well. And I think, you know, finally be really inclusive as well. You know, that balance of appreciating that if you're managing teams in different time zones, be considerate to the time of day that you're putting a meeting in, you know, be someone's remote, someone's a grouper in the room, make sure you include them all in that meeting and in that conversation. Again, making use of digital tools such as whiteboards so that it can be collaborative if you're doing a session as well. And finally, let's pull it all together. So, storytelling. Incredibly powerful. If you can, tell a story because it will make your presentation much more memorable as well. Have empathy. We talked empathy for our customers a lot, but remember about having empathy for your stakeholders as well. Taking a step back and reframing as well, so that you can get them to, you can empathise with them and maybe find out more by listening to them, what their situation as well. Conflict, if managed carefully, conflict can be really positive as well. So embrace that, refer back to that Thomas Kilmann model. I just touched upon it there, but it's a really interesting way of working. Vision, have your vision, be a dreamer, dream big and share that with your stakeholders as well. And there we covered remote working and some tips about how best to do that.